Profession by Isaac Asimov, Section 3, beginning in the middle of page 7. Of course, reading day had been different. Partly, there was the simple fact of childhood. A boy of 8 takes many extraordinary things in stride. One day, you can't read, and the next day, you can. That's just the way things are, like the sun shining. And then not so much depended upon it. There were no recruiters just ahead, waiting and jostling for the lists and scores on the coming Olympics. A boy or girl who goes off through reading day is just someone who has 10 more years of undifferentiated living upon Earth's crawling surface, just someone who returns to his family with one new ability. By the time Education Day came, 10 years later, George wasn't even sure of most of the details of his own reading day. Most clearly of all, he remembered it to be a dismal September day, with a mild rain falling. September for Reading Day, November for Education Day, May for Olympics. They made nursery rhymes out of it. George had dressed by the wall lights, with his parents far more excited than he himself was. His father was a registered pipe fitter and had found his occupation on Earth. This fact had always been a humiliation to him, although, of course, as anyone could see plainly, most of each generation must stay on Earth in the nature of things. There had to be farmers and miners and even technicians on Earth. It was only the late model, high specialty professions that were in demand on the outworlds, and only a few million a year out of Earth's 8 billion population could be exported. Every man and woman on Earth couldn't be among that group. But every man and woman could hope that at least one of his children could be one. And Platten, Sr., was certainly no exception. It was obvious to him, and to be sure to others as well, that George was notably intelligent and quick-minded. He would be bound to do well, and he would have to, as he was an only child. If George didn't end on an outworld, they would have to wait for grandchildren before a next chance would come along, and that was too far in the future to be much consolation. Reading Day would not prove much, of course, but it would be the only indication they would have before the big day itself. Every parent on Earth would be listening to the quality of reading when his child came home with it, listening for any particularly easy flow of words and building that into certain omens into the future. There were few families that didn't have at least one hopeful who, from reading day on, was the great hope because of the way he handled his trisyllabics. Dimly, George was aware of the cause of his parents' tension, and if there was any anxiety in his young heart that drizzly morning, it was only the fear that his father's hopeful expression might fade out when he returned home with his reading. The children met in the large assembly room of the town's education hall. All over Earth, in millions of local halls, throughout that month, similar groups of children would be meeting. George felt depressed by the grayness of the room and by the other children, strained and stiff in unaccustomed finery. Automatically, George did as the rest of the children did. He found the small clique that represented the children on his floor of the apartment house and joined them. Trevelyan, who lived immediately next door, still wore his hair childishly long and was years removed from the sideburns and thin red